for someone like outsider, the most significant and bold achievement is the acquisition.
The mission of Bina Technologies is to accelerate the research and science of personalized medicine. This industry is actually improving faster than the semiconductor industry. You know, I think I had my own fair share of pain and loss and suffering also on this journey. After I sold my company, unfortunately my mom got sick. She got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And then all of our family got together and we went through that for a few years, but unfortunately we lost our mom at the end of it. And after that I got sick myself.
It's absolute pleasure for us for having you today, and thank you for hospitality. I just want to, so obviously you're a famous figure in Persian community and all, in the tech ecosystem, but I want to tell my story the first time that I heard your name. So back in 2015, I read the book called Silicon Valley in Farsi, written by Dr. Tabesh, and he talked about lots of famous Persian entrepreneur like Mustafa Ronaqi, Farzad Nazem, and you are the only female and I think the youngest on the list. And I still remember the last line of your interview on that time that he mentioned that Narges started a startup and startup acquired after a few months of this interview by Roche. But for those who don't know you, so you went to University of Tehran, computer engineering for the undergrad. You stay in Iran for 1 year and did half a master Kanesh. Then you come to the US, obviously Stanford, you change your major to electrical engineering, and you get to know Mustafa after 2 weeks, and you start working on your idea. And at that time, synthetic biology and kind of thing is a new thing, and that the field that you started working, and you co-founded Bina Technology. And I think 2014, December, it acquired by Roche. That was your first phase of life. Then something changed, and we're gonna get through that. And you work on the different type of entrepreneurship. You've been there 2 years, and you came back here and you start Emerging program at Stanford. Narges Jan, we always talk that SecondPod is about the insight because we recorded 40-ish episode and we had an amazing guest. And we didn't talk about their journey, but your journey actually is insightful. And it's kind of resonate with our vision that we tell people why we choose this name, which is basically we are in 30s and 40s our life. And it's hard to give and get the second chance, especially on the professional journey as an immigrant. I want to ask you that you climbed the mountain, you had all the status, you went to Stanford, you started a startup on the hottest topic of the technology on that time. It got acquired, but 9-figure acquisition. But then you came down the mountain and started a new mountain. How does it happen? And what is your insight for us as this vision? I think it's a good start.
Yes, very good start. First of all, thank you so much for having me in your program. Very pleased to learn about the work that you're doing and hope it will be successful. I really actually like the name that you have picked for the podcast, SecondPod, because I've been reflecting on this vision that we have for our second half of our life. Usually the first half of life is about becoming successful and achieving. But the second half of life is where we are looking for some deeper meaning and impact in our life. And if we continue on the same pattern that we have started on the first half, usually we get tired, we get bored, we burn out. And there is this need for reinventing ourselves in the second half of our life. And as you said, not all people get a chance to do it, or they are not they don't put the effort that is required to reinvent yourself. But in order to feel really alive, it is very invigorating to think about a new chapter, a new goal that you set for yourself. And it is not separate from the first half of your life. Usually the learnings from the first half and achievements and failures and successes, they all play a role in defining what will be our next step and second half of our life, which I think SecondPod is very well positioned to talk to professionals who already have established themselves in some field, but they still have dreams and maybe they want even to change their careers. And I think it's never late, and you're actually much better positioned in your 30s and 40s to start something because you're more emotionally mature, you hopefully have more stability in your life, a more resourcefulness, and more wisdom to do something that hopefully is more longer term, and you don't rush into something. You usually are more thoughtful before starting it. Sometimes, the experts get to a place that they think nothing is possible. They say there's bliss in ignorance. So that sometimes is a problem for people who have an expertise in the field. They think, oh, I've seen it all. There's no other innovations possible. And that's why sometimes you need to change fields. Because when you go to another field, you bring that fresh perspective to it and you become more entrepreneurial. And you can relate different fields together and be inventive. So
awesome. Just a small follow-up. So it's back to 2018. What was your toolkit that help you that you find your second path and your second vision and empower you? And what's the vision on that time, if you want to frame for us?
2018.
Is this the right time that I mentioned?
So I started Bina Technologies in really last years of my PhD and postdoc studies at Stanford, and built a company with a group of engineer scientists, ran it for about 4 years, and then we sold the company to Roche. And it was a very strategic acquisition because our company became actually the software pillar of Roche Diagnostic Division in DNA sequencing. And I became vice president of software and informatics, and we led the development of many software products in Roche, which was a very rewarding journey for us. In 2018, my 3-year commitment to Roche to stay and build a team and lead that 1,000-people organization in Roche DNA sequencing, among other vice presidents, that ended. And the day that it ended, I resigned. I didn't stay one day longer, not because Roche was bad. I'm very grateful for that experience, but I am more entrepreneurial, and I knew that I want to go back to where innovation happens. But I didn't know what I want to do. I had to do some soul searching. And I was a little bit disillusioned about Silicon Valley. So when I first came to Silicon Valley, as a student in 2004, and then, as a startup founder, I could work in this ecosystem. I would say, for a long time, I was just mesmerized, I couldn't believe I'm here. Stanford campus is so beautiful. Is this real? Am I really here? But I think after, working here for more than a decade, I also realized some of the shortcomings that exist in the ecosystem, especially as it relates to positive societal impact. There are a lot of innovations happening, which is amazing. But at the same time, in 2018, I realized, I learned more, about social inequities, about climate change, about housing crisis that we have in Silicon Valley. And at the same time, I have gone through this path, as a student, as a founder, as a CEO, as a board member, as an executive in 100,000 people organization. And I saw how decisions are being made. And I realized that sometimes the market forces and the need to produce immediate profit, or, when you're in a startup, sell your company quickly and make a lot of exit valuation for your investors, dominate the way people make decisions. And I saw, for example, we celebrate the valuation of companies. We say a company is successful when they become a unicorn. What does it mean to be a unicorn? It means you have $1 billion valuation. Who benefits most from that? Your investors, who probably by that time have the biggest share on your company. And then, this whole notion of shareholder value maximization, that the responsibility of a company is to maximize the financial return for the shareholders. So I felt that there's something missing here. This system is broken in certain ways that doesn't promote or allow to do the best for the society. And I didn't know how to do better. So I took some time off. And I traveled for a couple of years. And for 1 year, I went to London because I got invited there by a group of people who are building a social impact incubator. And I worked with them for a while, as well as a few other venture builder entrepreneurial programs in London. And I also, read a lot of books. I went back to school. There's a school for systems change to learn about how systems evolve and change. And exploring this question of if we want to do something very meaningful, what can we do? Because on the first journey, when I started Bina, I didn't have that luxury. You all know it. When you're an immigrant, you're just graduating from school, you grab whatever opportunities in front of you because you just want to be successful. And there's nothing wrong with that. You need to be successful to be able to contribute eventually. But after that chapter ended and I had some success, that was not the motivational force anymore. I wanted to see what's the most useful thing I can do. And I had a little bit, more options than when I started Bina. So, I thought maybe I should go to nonprofits. Maybe I should go, work for charities or public sector, or maybe I should write a book. So I was looking at multiple dimensions. And what I realized is that the most powerful sector or ecosystem in the world is business sector. In fact, if you look at the top 200 biggest organizations in the world, the biggest power, more than 75% of them are businesses. And most of the talent, not only the money, most of the talent goes to the for-profit sector. So it is very impossible, I think, to think that nonprofit sector can solve the problems because they don't have the talent or power. We still need nonprofit sector. There are certain things that you cannot map to a business model, of course, but majority of the power is in the hand of government and then the businesses. So these are the two places. And then, as you see in this country and other places, the governments are being so much influenced by businesses, and governments are even behind understanding technology. So the business sector and the technology innovation sector has probably the biggest influence in the world. And so that is why I came back to, this is where the power is. How can we align this power with positive societal impact and impact for planet, impact for people? Because it's not always aligned. Sometimes it's aligned, sometimes it's not. And over time, I think it only gets more and more aligned. Otherwise, we're going to destroy the planet. And I want to play a role in aligning these two systems as much as possible. And so that became my goal, which I call impact-driven entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship is basically planting the seeds for the future of business sector. And how can from the beginning we set things in the right way that they can create positive value for society.
Awesome.
Merci, Narges Jan. It was great to hear the beginning of this transformation, this shift in in your second phase of career and view to life. And last year you published this essay on reframing entrepreneurship for impact. And you have given this framework around how we could shift entrepreneurship, the why, who, when, and why of it, so that we can move towards more impact versus optimizing for profit. I was wondering, how did you come up with this framework, and what concrete steps do you think entrepreneurs specifically or companies could take to move more towards like impactful entrepreneurship?
Yeah. So first of all, I think impact and profit, or purpose and profit, should not be separate things, because we need profit to build a company and grow it. You know, I'm sure you have heard in companies they say cash is oxygen. Yes. And I mean, it's a very, I think, good actually analogy. Like, we as human beings, we die if we don't have oxygen, but we don't live for oxygen. We live for much more meaningful things. So it's similar with companies. Companies need to have a purpose, but they also need cash to grow and scale and be able to pay people and so on. So the way I developed this framework for impact entrepreneurship is based on my own experience of going through this journey. It has 3 dimensions: impact leadership, impact innovation, and impact venture development. It starts with having a purpose for the organization. Always, you know, we've seen companies have a vision statement and they have a mission statement, but they are not always measuring it. It's a nice vision statement, they put it on their website, but what they actually measure and report and optimize for is that like quarterly revenue, and which needs to also be measured. But eventually, these 2 things should be aligned as much as possible. So how can we define a purpose, or what we call theory of change for a company, like how they want to go and make a difference in the world, and whose problem we are solving? All the companies are created to solve a problem, but whose problem you are solving, you know, and how many people are impacted by that problem. So these are good questions for entrepreneurs to ask themselves. Are they solving the problems of that top 0.01%, or solving the problem that impacts millions and millions of people or underserved communities? And it starts with setting the impact and the problem we are solving. And then it moves to the innovation. How can we, when we look at the users, how can we engage users from different backgrounds, or especially underserved communities, in developing a solution? And when we develop our business model, how much it can be aligned with an impact versus diverging from it. And then eventually it gets to a dimension of venture building, because you have seen it a lot that founders start a company, they have amazing ideas, but then they go and over time, you know, raise money, get diluted, or the company is sold and they lose control. So how can we have certain governance and legal structures that protect the mission of those companies for the long run? And how can we have the value of this innovation economy be distributed more equally among people, versus only a few people who start a company or like on the board benefit mostly from it? So these are some of the dimensions of this framework, but there's a lot more that we can develop under each of them. You're welcome.
It was a really great story, to be honest. When I'm looking at your story, I really want to be you. Yeah, really. Yeah, you know,
This is the first time we heard that, because Farzam has a high bar for himself. So.
But, you know,
I'm humbled.
Then looking at why I really came to Silicon Valley was, okay, I want to come here, have impact, become an entrepreneur, and be successful. But it looks like through your journey in Silicon Valley, you see some examples. Okay, this is really bad. I don't wanna go this route anymore. Or some real example of what you think it's a broken system in Silicon Valley. And then you're talking about impact entrepreneurship, which totally, I believe no big business or like a large scale business is not out there that's not impactful. They're very impactful. But the question is, as you mentioned, the market forces, the cycles of the companies, they start small, they have a problem to solve, then they grow, they become big, like investors come, you know. They have to go and become those things that probably don't like. So 2 questions here. Can you give us some real examples of what's really going wrong in Silicon Valley? I want to understand, because I'm starting this journey and I want to know that. Without those examples, I cannot imagine it. I cannot probably avoid those type of things. And then the next question is, isn't it like inevitable? Because it is a cycle of business that you cannot fight. It's like cycle of economic cycle that's happening. We have boom, bust, and stuff. So can we go through these with a little bit more like real world examples? For example, if you can give us some example of a company out there that, okay, this company could really do better if they do this or do that. Yeah.
Well, there's a reason I went to academia. Is exactly because what you're saying. Because some people told me, okay, just start a fund, go raise money, invest in good companies, impact businesses. But I said, no, I think it's not that easy. We need to change the whole business models, and it needs some scholarship. And that's why I went to the education sector to do some research on these topics, but also support the next generation and change minds of like doing business differently. I give you an example in the healthcare sector. When you think about a health tech company innovation, usually most of the money goes to therapeutics. You're making pills and medicine, or maybe medical devices for surgery or for diagnostic. Some money goes there. But we know, after like I spent more than a decade in the healthcare sector, and then I started reading articles and books, I learned, wow, 80% of our health outcomes are driven by social and environmental factors. In fact, medical interventions only impact 10% of health outcomes. But look at more than 90% of the investment money goes there because the business model in the healthcare system, it is broken. Like you need to be sick and then we need to keep giving you this medicine. And we need to change that. So what we're doing now with the program at Stanford, we say we want to look at prevention. We want to look at what we call systemic drivers of health, behavioral, social, environmental, and structural issues, from misinformation to climate change to the food that we eat to mental health, community, belonging, those factors. Now the question is, okay, how can you make money? So we try to do case studies to show actually there are business models. Maybe it's not the most, like low-hanging fruit and most obvious, but there are companies that are actually breaking grounds there. And also develop collaborations between different sectors. So for example, the government is spending trillions of dollars every year on Medicare and Medicaid populations. They have incentive to save cost. So how can they spend some of that money upfront on innovations that are going to prevent illness instead of later go and buy all this medicine from biopharma? So by looking at these inefficiencies in the market, you can go and propose new business models, maybe connect public sector and private sector. And or maybe change, for example, with the food. Maybe we can change the type of food hospitals or schools are serving. So we're trying to find and develop new business models and co-develop it with our students and the researchers to gradually shift the ecosystem towards better impact, better outcome for everyone, as well as cost saving. To give you an example of a company that did it very well, it's called Oak Street Health. I think last year they sold for $10 billion to CVS. They took care of a population of, I think, Medicare patients, and they basically took care of the social environmental needs of the patients, and they showed they decreased the hospitalization by 50%, save a lot of cost for Medicare, make a lot of money for investors. So we are trying to show that there are these win-win opportunities, bring them more to the awareness of the next generation, as well as help developing new business models in this area. That's right.
I think it's a good time to build, you have a question? To build what you are doing at Stanford, Emergence program. Mm-hmm. Actually, I advise our audience that the website is very resourceful. You bring the case studies, the course materials, and your thesis. So you mentioned why you start from academia. And what's the result? Like, you've been in this program like I think 2 years, 2-ish years. And on my personal perspective, when I was at B-School, I actually involved in the minority venture focus fund. And you mentioned that, yes, there are a bunch of impact fund, minority fund that focus on the misrepresented community. But at the end of the day, venture is a hard business. Even you have like all your capitalistic motivation. When you put impact hat as well, it's become much more harder. So I want to get your insight on these, like, what is your thesis that we can tackle these?
That's why I'm doing it. It was easy, but it didn't need help. Yeah, so you're right. It's hard. We are trying to make it easier, both in terms of developing the knowledge and know-how and frameworks, methodologies, as well as a network, a supportive network around the founders that can invest in them, they can advise them, they can collaborate with them, and so on. So if you look at the data, less than 5% of research that happens in academia is actually translated to companies. So think about all this federal funding and more, and donations that go to university, and less than 5% actually become impactful. So we try to make it a little bit bigger. Yeah, we try to support this translation to be more impactful and efficient. And educate the next generation that these are the opportunities to go and innovate and support, and then connect them to a supportive ecosystem. It hasn't been easy to build it because it's a new take on entrepreneurship. And as you said, it's a bit harder than just go for what is hot and trendy, where you can easily go and raise millions of dollars. No, this is like, you want to raise money for impact, it's
just
like
for the record,
box.
it's easy for you to raise millions of dollars, but a bunch of people out there cannot do that.
That is hard too, but comparing, like if you are an impact-driven founder, it's more like a black box. We don't know. So we are trying to put a little bit of light in it and say, okay, maybe you can go after impact funding or non-dilutive grants, or so how can we make this journey a bit easier for the founders?
Interesting. And can you share your vision for Emergence program? What's your vision? Like, what do you want to see that in 5 years is going to be like a subsidiary or become, take off?
So we are just still in the very beginning of the journey of Emergence program. The program goal is to catalyze impact-driven entrepreneurship, especially with the focus on health. But as I shared, mostly these systemic drivers of health. And the program has 3 pillars: research, education, and translation or acceleration. And we hope to develop more courses, work with many more founders, and especially faculty. This is the year we are starting to also working with faculty besides students. And it is just still the beginning. And I hope over time we can expand the ecosystem outside Stanford University and maybe have a branch in other universities, and then also growing it outside university in a way that help the companies scale. So this is just, we are at the moment the bridge between academia and outside, but there's a lot you can do after they graduate and launch their companies as well.
Narges, talking about Emergence program, impact entrepreneurship, I wanted to ask you, you've gone through the entrepreneurship journey yourself, and then shifted towards like more impact entrepreneurship and like education and acceleration, as you mentioned. Why do you think for founders or new entrepreneurs, why do you think it's more beneficial to think about impact entrepreneurship rather than like working in the traditional framework of profit-driven entrepreneurship?
Well, I think it's more meaningful and joyful at the end of the day. And you can inspire more people also to join you, because there's that emotional element when you're trying to solve a very important problem that have not been solved and is meaningful. It gives you, it's rewarding for yourself, it gives you fulfillment, as well as it makes it easier for you to build a team and attract the right type of people, around you. And you can stay on it for a longer time, because if you are only driven by, financial outcome, I've seen, people, quit more easily as soon as it becomes harder. But if you are there for some bigger passion and reason, they say, fall in love with the problem, not the solution, you usually have more resilience and patience to stay on the course of entrepreneurship. At the end of the day, you need to find a business model. It's not a charity, it's not a non-profit. But the idea is that how profit can be in the service of purpose. And I think that is more joyful, that's a more fun way to be an entrepreneur.
I love it. Just to summarize, there are multiple aspects. It's not just about being fulfilled, but it's also about more people resonate with your cause, and it's easier to grow your business and stay resilient and make it. So it's eventually it could be more successful if you have an actual purpose versus just being
100%. Okay. I totally deeply agree, and I think that's where the world is going. You're seeing that more and more investors and LPs are demanding some impact from the funds. You see that employees want to work for companies that have a purpose. You see consumers want, like the brands that are more responsible. So I think this is the direction of the business world, to become more responsible and purpose driven.
I have some kind of follow-up for the real example that recently happened. So OpenAI have a different governance structure. And I think initially it has a very good, let's say, intention. Like it should be nonprofit, and now at the son of the, become a golden egg, and they switch it to the profit base and change the structure and become, some people have a debate on it. At first, you should put that structure. And also there are lots of progress on DEI movement, ESG, on the corporate side, the government focuses, but it seems the result is not yet. And on the other side, people actually say that these are actually not the good things, become corruption and all that. What is based on your studies and your insight and you understand about the systems, what we are missing that impact investing and all that should be? What's the characteristic of good impact investment fund or company?
No, that's a very good point that you are mentioning, because they can start with a different governance and then change it, So ultimately, it's a human decision. Do you want to be impactful, or do you prioritize making money over impact? And it goes back to our worldviews and what we value more at the end of the day. And I think today we are living more in a materialistic world. So this is a more dominant worldview. We are trying to shift it towards more social impact, but it's not guaranteed that we'll be successful. That's why it's called emergence, because it's like still just emerging, as well as another meaning of the word emergence is something that is a criteria, something that happens when different parts of a complex system interact together, a new pattern can emerge. And the meaning behind that is that for a system to change eventually, you need all the different sectors. You need new policies in the government. You need, eventually even culture and the value system of the humanity to change towards more collectivism, or like caring about the planet and everyone versus individualism. And system change doesn't happen in isolation. We still have a long journey, but we have a lot of pockets of where you see these are emerging and people are thinking differently, especially I think with the next generation.
So when I look at the economic system systematically, especially in the United States, I don't see a path for an impact-driven company to go public at all. Because whenever you go public, if you miss a little bit of profit out there, you will be punished significantly by the market. Your market value goes down. And bad things start happening. And I believe at some point the CEO have to quit because of all the pressure that is out there. So you're talking about the business models and everything that all these impact first companies can use to become profitable and stuff. I want to talk about more about exit strategies viable in the economy, in the system that we have out there. Because when you start, you should also think about the exit as well. So how this cycle gonna work, and especially on the exit side of it, how you're gonna exit in this cycle. And I don't believe going public is the answer, because it's not, as we see is not possible.
Yeah, you see, for example, Patagonia, yeah, so they have hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, but they stayed private. In fact, they structured their governance to be completely foundation, like a nonprofit owning the company now. So I don't think I can share a lot of public companies examples today. I don't say that there are not any, but you're right, mostly they are private. Another good company we work with, actually, they teach in our class, called Zipline. They started by building, logistics for healthcare access in Africa, and now they're also having products in the U.S., drone delivery for like life-saving supplies and multi-billion-dollar valuation. So there are like a lot of companies that are achieving scale and are very impact-driven, but public markets sometimes are driven by more like quarterly short-term profit. They might be harder place for them. But again, it's a balancing act. Entrepreneurship is about being pragmatic. There is a concept in system thinking. It's called 3 horizons. And they talk about 3 like horizons that we see how the world might evolve. One horizon is that the status quo, the way it is today, it's going to continue to be the future. And, a lot of people are advocate for that because most people who are powerful today are benefiting from the current system. So they're going to put all the obstacles for the things not to change. There's another horizon, the 3rd horizon, which is very idealistic. Yeah, like everyone is equal, the world is peaceful, is green. And, we have like activists fighting for that. They're the minority. Usually they are not that successful. And there's a 2nd horizon, which is entrepreneurship and innovation. And the 2nd horizon connects the 1st horizon to the 3rd horizon. So it says we are starting here, but we want to go there. And it might take us hundreds of years, but we should not give up hope. We are hopeful. The world that we have inherited from our parents is a much better place in many ways, and a lot of problems have been solved. So what are the problems that our generation gonna solve? So have that mindset of hope and have a long-term goal and ideals, but at the same time, be pragmatic, and see what we can do today with what we have. So that is in my mind, the definition of entrepreneurship.
Narges, you talked about your new, how your vision shifted in life and about entrepreneurship and how you think about it. Looking back when you started Bina and took it to an exit and joined Roche, what would you have done differently with the view you have today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot that I learned in this journey.
Would you accept the offer?
Yeah, no, definitely. That was an exceptional offer. We were so grateful to be working with that team. So that hasn't changed. But in terms of how I work, a lot has changed. I think entrepreneurs are very busy people. Yeah, we have to solve so many problems. You have to raise money, recruit, sell, build a product, build a website, And we might become very task-oriented, accomplish, just take my to-do list. And that's dangerous because there is a much more important dimension, which is our inner dimension. And taking care of who we are as human beings and our relationships, both in our life, but also in the context of work. So one of the things I learned that is also, related to impact entrepreneurship and founder resilience is that how important it is for us to connect with what nourishes us and gives us energy. Because that's why we do things, and if we stop doing those things, we're going to deplete and we become this angry, impatient, leader that no one's enjoy working with. So for someone might be, I don't know, hanging out with their family. For someone might be music. For someone might be going to nature. But whatever it is, we need to make sure we dedicate time for it. The other thing is building very good relationships within the company. Usually, most of the stress comes from, stressful relationships, broken relationships inside the company. And you cannot really afford that, Whenever you want to do something, conflicts will arise. There will be hard conversations. And if there is not trust, if you have not already built a solid foundation of, connection and trust, then conflict will become very painful. and stressful. So invest in relationships. Every day you show up to your work, don't only think about the tasks you're going to accomplish. Think about the relationships you're going to strengthen that day, because that will help with the long-term success of your work and your organization. What else? I think these are the couple of learnings that I have.
I want to build something before you ask the question on that. So we mentioned that you started a second journey, but it wasn't easy.
No.
And we know something personal happened, and you were burnout, and you recover. And I think, is there a story or toolkit that you can, because I think entrepreneurship is a kind of loneliest path, especially when you are immigrant, and you are one of the successful ones, but there are a bunch of people that actually go through the path. They have lots of chip on the shoulder, but nothing happened. They work a lot, they do the task, they burn out, and they're gonna be disappointed, and they back to the first journey. I don't want to say advice, but what is the learning that from that time, or any story that you can share?
Yeah, I think I had my own fair share of pain and loss and suffering also on this journey. After I sold my company, unfortunately, my mom got sick. She got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And then all of our family got together, and we went through that for a few years. But unfortunately, we lost our mom at the end of it. And after that, I got sick myself. So for a few years, I've been dealing, with chronic health issues. But thankfully, I'm recovering and doing much better. But it hasn't been easy at all. And I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot through this. Life is not only about achieving. Life is also about losing and pain. And it is very childish view that we think life should only be like happy and positive things. And especially the second half of life, I think we're going to experience more and more losses to prepare us for the ultimate loss, when we're going to lose everything that we have. And I think the Western philosophy is very much based on success and achieving and kind of sense of agency, that we can solve problems, and it's very useful. And the Eastern philosophy is a little bit more about surrender and acceptance. And we kind of need both. I think when we are facing a big challenge, we need to both be helpful, that we can solve it and do our best. At the same time, we need to expand our capacity for loss. If we, for example, with the work, if we identify too much with this is me, if this company fails, I'm nothing, of course, that's going to be very painful. But when that company fails, maybe it's a time to think, we are much bigger than that, and that's not a very big deal, So I think pain and loss helps us to grow and become better people, be more compassionate and empathic towards other people suffering, and be deeper and become better people at the end of it. So it's not easy, but it is definitely part of life. And
what was really helped you on that time? The source that you can share, or maybe someone else, is the person, is the methodology, is the book, is the routine of the life? What's that?
I think it's this combination of not giving up and trying to solve the problem, but at the same time change your perspective and don't think that good life is to just without this problem. How can you actually accept it and embrace it? So there is, I'm a big fan of Zen philosophy, and they have this saying which I like. They say, turn your obstacles to the path. So what it means is that don't think that I want to go there and there's this problem now, I can't go there. How can you actually embrace your problem and make it, integrated with your life? So we all, for example, are immigrants. We have problems what happens to our country, or we might not be, with our family. How can we use these problems in a way that is integrated in what we do and give meaning? Problems at the end of the day give meaning to our life. If there's no problem, there's no meaning. What we're going to do with our life. So see the positive as much as possible in the challenges.
It's really good. You still have the question? You got all that?
Yeah, I have the question, but I think the vibe changed. You know, I have to come back. I don't know if you want to continue this. I think
we can ask. Yeah,
we have one more question about community.
Oh, okay. Oh,
that one I actually, yeah, while we're on the topic, because you've done a lot on the community side, both on Persian community, non-Persian community. I wanted to ask you, tell us first of all a little bit about your work on that side, but more than that, tell us what makes the community building work successful, and how can that contribute towards reframing entrepreneurship and
No, community is very, very important, especially I think for immigrants. You know, we need to put more effort in building communities. There was a study, I think, in Harvard that they followed like people for 7 years, and they saw that the number one factor in like being healthy is community and sense of belonging. So people really, you know, discount that. People think, oh, it is just like every second I have in my day, I need to use it for like self-improvement. You know, I need to get fitter and like smarter and read more and be more successful. But that's not who we are. You know, we are social beings, and we need community and connections. And community is not about like how people gonna help me. It's about how I can help other people. Yeah. So I think that's how community gets formed. Like how people can come together to help each other and connect. And yes, there are a lot of benefits for each person who gets involved, but that shouldn't be the driver for you to build a community. For me, you know, when I was a student, we did some community work, and then we built the Iranian Stanford Alumni Association a few years ago that we organized some gatherings. That was very fun. It is not easy because everyone is so busy, especially in Silicon Valley. And there are always, you know, you find some individuals like yourself who are passionate and, you know, take the time after work and weekends and do these things. But at some point, you know, those people get tired, and then they think, okay, let's pass it to the next generation, but then it might fizzle down. So one thing I learned is that while there is a, you know, we need to have a core group of like-minded people to build a community that's necessary, that group also needs to think about the continuity. So they need to also develop the next generation and find their replacement while still they're doing it. Otherwise, unfortunately, we know so many community efforts that start and they don't continue. But I hope we see more, and I hope your work actually continues to expand and become some anchor to bring community together.
You still have the question?
Let's stay on this topic of community.
Let's stay on this topic. Actually, it's a really good topic. So when you were a student, you do PSA Business Alliance, then you after that ISPS, ISA, and also you working with a charity in Iran that empowering the people on the underrepresented community to become like learning computer engineering, coding. Yeah. And how does it work going on? Yes,
so we started Karyar, which actually is a social impact company. It's not a charity. We're trying to find also a business model for it to grow during the pandemic, because what happened is that, as you remember, many people lost their jobs and the economic sector really got impacted during the pandemic, and we were thinking what we can do. And I started this Karyar company, or kind of social enterprise, with my father actually and some friends in Tehran. And we have also a very good group of people here in Silicon Valley who are advising and collaborating with Karyar. And the goal is to both teach coding skills but also facilitate employment in the tech sector in the remote areas in Iran and underserved communities. And during the pandemic, one good thing that happened is that online meetings became very the norm. So this is completely online school. All the classes and mentorship sessions and workshops, everything is online. And we have been now running Karyar for, I think, about 3 years, and about 1,000 trainees have gone through the program, and majority of them have successfully landed a job or internship either in the tech companies or as a freelancer. And it's doing very well and growing, and thanks to the amazing team on the ground in Iran who are building Karyar.
Awesome. Any question on the social impact or anything? You don't have any interest in this topic? I have actually one question on. I'm sorry, I don't want to ask all the questions, but I have one question on the Persian community, tech Persian community here. You have a solid experience. Actually, you have a very interesting journey. Like you came here in 2004, and you went to Stanford. You got your company acquired. Then start the second one. Like you actually check all the markets, but you said that's not a good philosophy to do it. It seems our communities still have some labeling on the different type of the people. What different, like I'm from this school, I come from this family, and we don't have that acceptance that actually American culture has a different view that they say if you can done the job, like let's do it. Do you think this is the kind of something that we need evolvement? Like we need to accept everyone and try to empower, and instead of build a club that you have to be in our club. And do you think, and I'm just saying as my personal experience,
I think the world is changing dramatically. Stanford or like all these big brands do not have the power they used to have, because so much of the education is shifted, of course, to online content. And I think the world is changing. I think I've heard, if you look at the top engineers, they, like in Google, let's say, they used to hire them from Stanford, but that's, of course, no longer the case at all. So I think it's the same with entrepreneurship. They can come from all sorts of walk and education backgrounds. So I don't know, because I haven't experienced what you are talking about.
You have all this status, so you're always welcome in the club.
I was, I was very fortunate when I was at Stanford. What helped me actually was some of the Iranian founders who I knew through, just we were classmates at Stanford. They started companies and then they connected me with their investors. That was how I raised my first round. But I don't think they gave me money because of Stanford name. They looked at what I do, and that was a decision making. But there are many other ways to get connected, and having a community definitely helps there.
Now that you mentioned the minority aspect of being an entrepreneur, you mentioned that's evolved a lot. You've already mentioned in the past that being a female entrepreneur, it was particularly difficult for you to do fundraising. Do you think that has shifted also in the past 10 years? And has there been enough shift? I'm sure there's more room to improve, of course, but do you think if there's been a dramatic change in that past 10 years or not yet?
No, I think maybe it has got worse, actually. I heard that the money that goes to female founders is 2% of the whole venture capital. And even for me now, I am a founder again too. Yeah, so I went to Stanford and I tried to start a new program within the context of very extremely competitive context of Stanford University. And it has not been easy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think if I was a white male, for sure things were 100 times easier for me. But what can we do? It is what it is. I heard someone when I was doing a company told me, it's like race cars. If you look at the wall, you're going to hit the wall. So you need to just look at the road. Yeah, so we need to look at the road. We need to do our best, and we need to find people who support us. That's, I think, as founders, as entrepreneurs, that's the most important thing, to surround yourself with a very supportive group of people, whether they are your employees or your board members. You need people who believe in you. They're loyal. They're your champions. You cannot work with people who are questioning you and undermining you. That's already, you have to solve so many problems. So find those few people that believe in you, and then you can do amazing things with them.
Yeah, in the topic of community, I wanted to ask about Silicon Valley and Persian community here. I think when you look at your journey, you were trying to establish multiple communities based on the Persian identity that we have. Do you think? I want to know about your vision. Do you think something really missing in the Persian community in Silicon Valley, and what we can do. I'm not saying we are the next generation, but what we can do that to give something to this community, to bring something to this community, and then how we can build it, how we can make it more impactful.
Yeah, I think there's a lot we can do. You know, one of the problems in California and the United States, but also California, is that everything is so spread out. So people go to their work, then they get on their car and they go home. And like, if you're living in a big city like Tehran or London, New York, is not like that, because you see people in public transit, in public places, you walk to places, yeah. And I think that's one of the problems in California, that communities overall are weakened because we don't have enough public spaces. And how can we create more opportunities for people actually to see each other, to hang out with each other, you know, around whatever positive topic it can be. It can be a poetry club or book club or dance club, or it can be get together just to hang out. And I think one topic I'm very passionate about is that art and culture, like Iranian art and culture, that for some reasons, you know, some part of it have not been able to have the freedom to develop as much in our country. And we have now here that freedom. So how can we support more development of that art and culture? And we have so many good artists actually in the Bay Area that they need support to develop more content. And there's just so many things we can do, but we need to have just, you know, the coordination to bring people together. We need to have space to do that. I'm very interested to explore more ways we can bring the community together.
I read about you somewhere, you mentioned you take everything seriously, like everything. I can say that, like the tea is really good, everything just... but for someone like outsider, the most significant and bold achievement is the acquisition that happened. I think, put some stat on it, per employee, number of employees, very successful acquisition, just 25 employee, and it actually happened because the story that you mentioned, that Roche previously bought a hardware company on your field, and because of the relationship you build, they advise you as a software cover on that. So we don't want to talk about the acquisition process and all that, but you talk about the community. There is anyone or any person actually really be like a sponsor during that process?
The person who helped me the most was Bobby Yazdani, who was our board member and really amazing advisor and coach to founders and entrepreneurs. And you know, I did all of the negotiations myself, all of the, you know, conversations with all the different 4 or 5 companies we were negotiating with, but I practiced all of them with Bobby, as well as Tim Guleri, who was the other board member. So that was very valuable.
Awesome. I think it's a good spot to finish our interview.
Exciting story.
Yeah, thank you. Merci. خیلی خوب.
One last question I want to ask. You mentioned like the very tough time you had. You talked to Nushain and like you had. What is your advice to those entrepreneurs who are at the like bottom and they're like, what do I do from here? What is your advice to them?
Don't look at the wall.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very difficult journey. Entrepreneurship is very difficult. I think you need to prepare for those days a little bit. You need to have the expectations that they will happen, and have a little bit of a reserve of what you're going to do in those days. But as I said, you know, have a supportive team around you and advisors. That's very important to help you as you go through the tough times.
Okay. Yeah, I love that. Like planning for it and knowing that it's coming, because it will come eventually.
Yeah, it will come. Well, thank you so much.
Merci. خیلی
Thank you.